Hello, welcome to India Business Hour. I'm Parikshit Luthra. Here are the headlines we are tracking this evening. Sensex and Nifty hit a two-month low after broad-based selling. Weak Q2 earnings and fears over consumer demand this festive season spook investors. Infosys meets estimates in Q2 with 4% revenue growth, raises the revenue guidance for the full year and maintains the margin outlook. Wipro reports revenue growth in Q2 after 6 quarters of decline. Large deal bookings were the highest in 10 quarters, but third quarter guidance disappoints. Wipro also approves a 1:1 bonus share issue. The Israeli army says it may have killed the military leader of Hamas, Yahya Sinwar, who is allegedly the mastermind of the October 7 attacks. Claims 3 militants were killed in an operation in Gaza, but it is yet to confirm the identity of those killed. Hyundai Motor India's 28,000 crore rupee IPO fully subscribed on the last day of sale. Qualified institutional buyers come to the rescue after muted demand from retail investors. This is India's largest IPO to date. Days after RBI governor's warning, 4 non-banking financial companies ordered to seize and desist sanction and disbursal of loans. Action against Navi Finserv, Ashirvad Microfinance, Arohan Financial Services and DMI Finance after RBI finds material supervisory concerns. A flurry of hoax bomb threats continue to disrupt Indian Airlines. At least 27 hoax bomb threats in 4 days hamper international and domestic flights. So far, the police have detained a 17-year-old minor from Chhattisgarh for allegedly threatening 3 flights. Tata Trust Board will meet soon to decide on nominating a third representative to the board of Tata Sons, the parent company of the conglomerate. Sources say that the new Tata Trust chairman, Noel Tata, is likely to join Venu Srinivasan and Vijay Singh on the Tata Sons board. 60% of economists downgrade Q2 GDP forecast according to a CNBC TV18 poll, cite weak trade data, slowing industrial output and GST collections. Also downgrade full-year growth forecast to 6.85%. City gas distributors will see nearly 20% lower gas allocation at administered prices. Companies will need to increase imports to meet demand and hike prices to maintain margins. Indraprastha Gas warns of adverse impact on profitability. The Supreme Court upholds Section 6A of the Citizenship Act, which allows citizenship to foreigners who entered Assam after 1st January 1966 and on or before 24th March 1971. Petitioners had argued that the clause changed Assam's demography. Civil society groups had argued that striking down the clause would render a large number of people in Assam stateless. New Zealand bowlers run riot in Bengaluru. India bowled out for 46 runs in the first innings of the first test. This is India's lowest innings score on home soil. Let's start with the market action. Sensex and Nifty hit their lowest levels in 2 months as markets see broad-based selling. Mid-caps saw sharper cuts with the index falling nearly 1,000 points. Auto stocks led the decline and the Nifty Auto Index was down more than 3%. The European Central Bank has cut its key interest rate by 25 basis points to 3.25%. This is its third quarter percentage point reduction of the year. In a statement following the decision, the ECB's Governing Council said that the process of disinflation well on track. However, the central bank maintained that inflation will rise in the coming months before declining to target in the next year. Hyundai Motor India's 28,000 crore rupee IPO has been fully subscribed on the last day of sale. Qualified institutional buyers came to the rescue, bidding for nearly 7 times the shares on offer. Non-institutional investors subscribed 60% of the shares on offer. However, demand from retail investors remained muted, fetching 50% subscription. This is the lowest retail subscription among large IPOs. LIC's issue had seen a retail subscription of 1.9 times. Even Paytm and Coal India IPOs saw a stronger retail showing. In Earnings Corner, Infosys met estimates in Q2 with 4% revenue growth. The IT major has raised the revenue guidance for the full year and maintained its margin outlook. Reema Tendulkar is here with the latest.
So Infosys was a good quarter in line with street expectations, but it lacked a positive surprise. And considering the stock was up 2.5% today, up 40% since June, the question is, will it excite the street? Now coming to the numbers. The company's top line grew by 3.8% quarter on quarter in dollar terms. Constant currency revenue growth at 3.1%. As per the CNBC TV18 poll, and ahead of peers like HCL Tech TCS, which had a 1.5% top line growth. The company has gone ahead and upgraded its full year revenue forecast. So 3 to 4% has become 3.75 to 4.5%. Margin guidance remains unchanged at 20 to 22%. Manufacturing, energy were the two leading verticals. BFSI momentum continued. So that was a positive. And hiring, after 6 consecutive quarters, when the net headcount of the company declined, this time the total headcount has gone up by about 2,500 employees. But that said, the total deal wins fell by about 42% quarter on quarter, nearly 70% on a year-on-year basis, and there was no margin expansion in Q2. Considering there was no wage hike kicks in only in Q3, the street would have hoped for some margin expansion, but margins came in at 21.1%. So all in all, it's a good quarter, it's a healthy quarter, growth is ahead of peers, there is a guidance upgrade, but it just lacks a positive surprise.
First, on the revenue growth guidance, the way we look at this is based on what we've done in the quarter. Then we look at our pipeline and look at what we anticipate. And based on those factors, as we sit today looking out for this financial year, that's Q3 and Q4, we've looked to increase the revenue growth guidance. We see financial services, the discretionary spend is looking stable, strong, especially as we highlighted in capital markets, cards and payments. We also shared that in automotive we see slowness in Europe.
From one IT company to another, Wipro has reported revenue growth in the second quarter after 6 quarters of decline. Its constant currency revenue grew at 0.6% on a quarterly basis. The company's margins expanded for the 3rd straight quarter. Its large deal bookings stood at 1.5 billion, the highest in 10 quarters. However, its revenue growth guidance for the 3rd quarter is lower than expected. Wipro has also approved a 1:1 bonus share issue.
During the quarter, we booked 19 large deals with a TCV of 1.489 million, or which is close to 1.5 billion. This translates to a growth of 29% sequentially and 16.8% on a year-on-year basis. It's encouraging to see the diversity in our large wins across sectors. In fact, the deals we have won cover a variety of themes, from cost reduction and vendor consolidation to application modernization and cloud operations.
Axis Bank also reported its second quarter earnings today. The company's net profits rose by 18% on a yearly basis to 6,918 crore rupees, beating street estimates. Its net interest income also rose 10%. Gross bad loans fell on a sequential basis to over 15,400 crore rupees. Nestle India posted a weak second quarter performance, and the company cited softer consumer demand and elevated commodity prices. The FMCG giant missed estimates on revenue and margins, while volume growth was also muted. Nestle's global parent has also cut its full-year growth guidance. Shilpa Ranipeta is here with more.
Well, definitely, like you mentioned, it's a weak quarter for Nestle India with a negative volume growth and revenue and margins both coming in below expectations. The company has attributed this to a challenging external environment with muted consumer demand and high commodity prices, especially for coffee and cocoa. And the prices of cereals and edible oils are also rising, the company said. Now, as a result, some of its key brands witnessed pressure due to softer consumer demand, and only 5 out of its 12 top brands actually grew in double digits. In fact, Nestle's global parent also reported a weak quarter, and this has been on the back of muted consumer demand and high commodity prices as well here. Now, it lowered, in fact, its full year outlook, and now it expects the organic sales growth to be just around 2% for 2024, and this is lower than the guidance of 3% that it had given in July. And it has also said that the underlying trading operating profit margin also will be around 17%. Now, remember, Mark Schneider was ousted as a CEO in August after the company had reported a whole host of, several quarters of weak volumes, and now under the new CEO, Nestle is in fact revamping its operating structure, and it's also reducing the size of its executive executive board, and that is going to be something that we'll have to watch out for, especially in terms of consumer demand for India as well. Now, in another major development also, Nestle has said that it is launching variants of its baby food brand Cerelac in India without refined sugar. Now, remember, Nestle had faced scrutiny earlier this year after Swiss agency Public Eye and the International Baby Food Action Network had claimed that the company's baby food that is sold in developing nations, which also included India, actually contained added sugar. And it did not contain that in its primary markets like Europe and UK. And addressing this, it has now expanded its range in India, where 14 out of the 21 Cerelac variants in India will have no refined sugar. 7 of these will be launched by the end of November, and the rest will come in the coming weeks. Back to you.
In what is yet another sign of subdued consumer demand, electrical equipment maker Havells reported a weak second quarter performance. Profits and margins were well below estimates, even as revenues were in line. Havells continues to report losses on their acquisition of Lloyds. The management said volatility in commodity prices dented the margins. Shares of Bajaj Auto plunged over 10% in trade, the biggest decline since the market crash in 2020 due to the pandemic. The shares came under pressure despite the company meeting street estimates in the second quarter. But what worried investors was the commentary from the management on festive season. The two-wheeler industry has clocked 1 to 2% growth so far in the first half of the festive season. This is below the company's own projection of 5 to 6% growth and well below brokerage's estimates, which had pegged a growth rate of 8 to 10%.
I would say that the first half of the festive has been slightly below expectations. There is growth, but very marginal growth in the industry. The 100cc bottom half segment is, as per Vahan registrations, negative, and the 125cc plus segment is positive. But put together, the industry is at 1 to 2% growth in the first 15-16 days of the festive.
The Reserve Bank of India has barred 4 NBFCs from sanctioning and disbursing loans from the 21st of October. Asirvad Microfinance, Arohan Financial Services and also Navi Finserv have been flagged for material supervisory concerns. The central bank said the pricing policies of the firm's weighted average lending rate were higher than permitted. The interest spread charged over their cost of funds were also not in adherence with regulations. City gas distributors will see nearly 20% lower gas allocated at administered prices. This means that companies will now need to increase imports to meet demand and hike prices to maintain margins. Indraprastha Gas had warned of adverse impact on profitability. It added that it will discuss with key stakeholders to minimize impact. The APM gas allocation was cut after ONGC Petro Additions was allocated a higher share. Now to a CNBC TV 18 exclusive. Days after being appointed as Tata Trust's new chairman, Noel Tata may join the Tata Sons board as its third nominee. CNBC TV 18 has learned that the Tata Trust board is likely to meet soon to discuss the matter. Venu Srinivasan and Vijay Sangh are the current Tata Trust nominees on the board. At present, Noel Tata is also the chairman of Trent, Tata Investment Corp and Tata International, and the vice chairman of Tata Steel. Economists have begun to downgrade their forecast for India's GDP growth in the second quarter. According to a CNBC TV 18 poll, 60% of the economists surveyed cut their growth forecast in the past few weeks. Lata Venkatesh has the details.
Yes, now that most of the August-September data is in and many of it were found to be soft, we decided to do a poll, and our poll indicated that 60% of the economists whom we had polled have cut their estimates, GDP estimates, for the second quarter, and the cut is between 10 and 40 basis points. So now the average second quarter GDP is coming in at 6.79%. Earlier, it had come in at 6.91%. Obviously, not everyone is at 6.79. The largest number of economists were at 6.8, but there were some who were lower. The Reserve Bank's own forecast is 7% for the second quarter, which they announced in the October policy. But in the August policy, they had 7.2. So they've already brought it down by 20 basis points. For the full year, there were fewer respondents, but there as well, the average has come down in the past month to 6.85% from an earlier average of 6.91%. 20% of the analysts polled have brought down their forecast for the full year, but another 30% said that there is a downside risk to their forecast, but they have not changed it. The reasons for the slowdown, which people mentioned: one, the September imports have clearly remained flat year on year and have fallen by about 15% month on month from August to September. That is the immediate reason. The export data from September to September has remained flat. August IIP was minus 0.1%. August core sector was minus 1.8%. The September PMI came in at an 8-month low, but it was high at 56 plus. And the September GST collections came in at only 6% compared to a nominal GDP growth of 10 to 11%. That is low. It's also the lowest, probably the lowest growth since COVID. Now, the earnings data also forecasts show that it is going to be a muted quarter. Motilal Oswal says that the Q2 Nifty earnings growth will be only 2% and that the margin tailwinds are also declining. This impacts the GVA, and MK also says that the Q2 Nifty EPS is likely to grow at only 5%. Put all this together and you can see why economists are lowering their Q2 GDP growth forecasts.
Niti Aayog member Ramesh Chand says the formula used to calculate minimum support price is the reason for high food inflation. Speaking to Lata Venkatesh, Ramesh Chand said agri-exports from India could become uncompetitive due to high prices.
In case of cereals, much of what you will watch happening in the market is the translation of what we do to MSP.
Okay.
If we are increasing MSP by 6%, 5%, and some little factor adding from market, make it to 8% and 9%.
Okay.
So if because
once
of
you
shortage,
increase it is
if because of shortage price MSP is given raise in 1 year, that become a base for further rise in next years. And now we have a new formula.
Yes.
A2 plus FL into 50%. I'm not criticizing it, but that formula has led to detachment between what would be open market price and what is MSP in most cases.
A flurry of hoax bomb threats continue to disrupt Indian Airlines. At least 32 hoax bomb threats in 4 days have hampered both international and domestic flights. The Mumbai police has filed 7 FIRs relating to bomb threats. However, only a 17-year-old minor has been detained from Chhattisgarh for allegedly threatening 3 flights. Madiha Mujawar is here with all the details.
Well, 30 bomb threats in the last 4 days. Thousands of passengers traveling across airlines have been subjected to severe inconvenience in the last 4 days. This is probably the first time in Indian aviation that airlines have received a series of bomb threats in 4 days in a row. Since all these threats have appeared to be hoax, the government is taking these pranks very seriously. Sources tell CNBC TV18 the Civil Aviation Ministry is considering strict norms to prevent incidents like hoax bomb threats to airlines. The ministry is looking at a proposal to place the perpetrators of such crimes on the no-fly list. The ministry is examining rules followed by foreign countries to deal with hoax bomb threats. We learned that discussions are underway with Home Ministry, Law Ministry, as well as airlines, and the government is also exploring law amendments if necessary to deter people from making hoax bomb threats to airlines.
Action is being taken on these kind of issues so that they don't become precedent for future. So they are all very minor and isolated incidents. There is no kind of conspiracy that we can comment on. No, I think these are all just rumors that are floating around. That we can't comment on that. But whatever we know right now, there are all individual people, most of them minors, who don't understand the whole idea of what they are doing. And they are creating this kind of inconvenience. But from our side, we are going to see what best we can do.
The government of India has already passed a law in 1982, the suppression of unlawful acts against the safety of civil aviation in 1982. This act also defines such communication under Section 3D, and it shall be punished with imprisonment for life. There is no need for any further pause on this subject matter. Communication of hoax threat is already there, which is false and which causes panic. Why should the government of India reinvent a law which is already there?
And coming up on India Business Hour, the Supreme Court upholds Section 6A of the Citizenship Act, which allows citizenship to foreigners who entered Assam after 1st January 1966 and on or before 24th March 1971. Details when we are back. Also catch CNBC TV 18 news and updates on Facebook, X, Threads, Instagram and JioCinema. Israel military has said there is a possibility that Hamas leader Yahya Sinwar was among the 3 terrorists killed during the Gaza offensive. He was one of the chief architects of Hamas's attack on Israel on the 7th of October 23. That has spiraled into a regional conflict. The IDF said that they are still confirming the identity of the terrorists at this point. In a tweet, the IDF said that there were no hostages present in the building that was targeted, leading to the terrorist's death. Sinwar was chosen as the group's leader following the assassination of Ismail Haniyeh in Tehran in July. Sinwar was appointed as Hamas's leader in Gaza in 2017. He was formerly head of a Hamas arm, which punished Palestinians accused of liaising with Israel's secret service. The Indian government has taken pot shots at the Canadian government yet again, adding fuel to its already strained diplomatic ties over the killing of Khalistani separatist Hardeep Singh Nijjar. The latest missive comes after Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau told an inquiry commission that there was credible intelligence but no evidence to support allegations of Indian diplomats' involvement in Nijjar's killing.
Canada has levelled serious allegations but has so far not given any evidence to back it up. As far as the allegations are concerned, PM Trudeau's own admission yesterday would indicate the value. As regards our stance on the allegations, we will naturally reject false imputations against our diplomats.
India and Australia may speed up negotiations for a free trade agreement. We learned from government sources that the two countries are aiming to close discussions within the next 2 months. Sources also adding that Australia is slated to go to polls next year and talks on a comprehensive economic cooperation agreement could extend beyond the electoral period. Naib Singh Saini has taken oath as the Chief Minister of Haryana for the second term. This marks the BJP's historic third consecutive term in the state. Prime Minister Narendra Modi, Home Minister Amit Shah, BJP Chief JP Nadda and Chief Ministers of NDA-ruled states were present at the ceremony. BJP leaders Anil Vij, Krishan Lal Panwar and Rao Narbir Singh were among the 13 other cabinet ministers who took oath today. The Supreme Court has upheld Section 6A of the Citizenship Act. The provision allows foreigners who entered Assam after 1st of January 1966 and on or before 25th March 1971 to apply for citizenship. Petitioners had argued that the clause changed Assam's demography, while civil society groups had said that striking down the clause would render a large number of people in Assam stateless. Ashwat Kumar is here with the details on the ruling.
Well, a landmark 4:1 decision by a 5-judge bench of the Apex Court upholding the constitutionality of Section 6A of the Citizenship Act. Now, here's a quick background to it. There was a 6-year-long agitation which concluded in 1985 with the Assam Accords, with the deal being struck between the student body of Assam as well as the centre. The result of that was the introduction of Section 6A in the Citizenship Act. What this act sought to do is that it provided a window from the 1st of Jan 1966 to 24th of March 1971, and within this window, foreigners, specifically Bangladeshis who had moved to Assam, would be allowed citizenship. Now, this was fiercely contested by a whole host of petitioners before the Apex Court. They had argued that this is changing the demographic complexion of the state, that the indigenous population of Assam is being turned into a minority, that they're having to cede political control, they're having to cede employment opportunities, and that this is a huge concern going forward. The Apex Court, however, not in agreement with that. The Supreme Court upholding the constitutionality of Section 6A, talking about harmonious coexistence, talking about not being able to pick one's neighbors, and then going on to say that the Parliament did indeed have the legislative competency to go ahead and to pass such legislation. And importantly, the Supreme Court also remarking that this was a political solution which has been effected through these means, and therefore needs to be respected, needs to be upheld by the Apex Court. The only caveat, however, that needs to be borne in mind is that the Apex Court, the majority view that was authored by Justice Kant, very clearly says that illegal immigrants, that foreigners coming in after this deadline of March 24th, 1971, are in fact illegal immigrants, and that they need to be acted against, they need to be deported.
And Chief Justice of India, Justice D.Y. Chandrachud, has nominated Justice Sanjeev Khanna as his successor. Justice Chandrachud will retire on November 10th. Once the government approves, Khanna will be India's 51st Chief Justice. He is expected to take over the role for 6 months till his retirement in May 2025. Khanna was elevated as a Supreme Court judge in January 2019. He was part of the 5-judge bench that declared the electoral bond scheme as unconstitutional and upheld the abrogation of Article 370 in J&K. And before we wrap, Snapchat has published a report on the spending power of Gen Z in India. According to the report, there is an estimated 377 million people who could be classified as Gen Z. 25% of are currently part of the workforce. According to the report, Gen Z are currently driving spending worth $860 billion. This could go up to $2 trillion by 2035.
What we came out as a platform, we came out as a platform that put camera first. You open to the camera, it's about you, yourself, your expression, and your ability to connect with friends and family. And therefore, I think one of the biggest myths that this report broke for me was the fact that this generation is deeply embedded in building genuine connections, which is, whether it is online or offline, it doesn't matter to them. They are all about individual expression. At the same time, they are also about building deeper connections.
With that, it's a wrap on this edition of India Business Hour. Thank you for watching. News continues right here on CNBC TV 18.